Hey guys, here's part 2 of the Final Fantasy Tactics fan art. Just finishing up the image. The image is sped up 14 times, so the original file was 4 hours and 10 minutes or so. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I have a lot more videos coming up very shortly. Here I'm just fixing, or trying to fix the lighting a little bit. Adding some cool colors in the shadows, as well as darkening it a tiny bit, and then I'm going to go over the top with a linear dodge layer to add in some bounce light, which will lighten up the shadows with cool colors, giving a good contrast between the warm light hitting it from the top left and the cool light in the shadows. So yeah, just adding the bounce light. It is sped up a bit fast this time, but I didn't have much time to narrate and do the editing, so I shortened it so I could just quickly put some narration over the top, because I didn't want to post a video that doesn't have any narration or anything like that, because I find a lot of those videos on YouTube to be quite boring to watch. So this is how I prefer to post my videos, with narration. Still trying to get the bounce light and everything to work. Adding a bit of highlights, fixing the overall, and trying to stay zoomed out while I do this part. Here I'm just fixing the lighting in the face, trying to take out some of the harsh values and making it look not so muddy. Taking out a bit of the saturation in the hair. I just felt that it was just too saturated and too light in value. Trying to make it look a little more natural. Not that any of this is looking natural, but yeah. Just in general, in the whole piece, I added too much dark areas, and through most of this I'll be trying to fix that as I detail things and flesh them out. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to show form with the least amount of brush strokes, so that you don't have to do too much touching up and painting over the same areas too much. This will save you time, and that really helps when you're trying to finish an image in a very short amount of time. That's something I haven't learned quite yet. Here I'm just fixing the face, trying to make it look a little softer and adding a bit more hue variation. And also trying to separate some of the bigger shapes in the hair, make it look more like strands. And fix the lighting a little bit and the shape. I had a lot of trouble with the eyes. They were very dull-like, and I never quite fixed that, but I did the best I could. Just trying to fix the lighting and the value and the hue. You always want to remember that the shadows are cool and the light hitting it is warm, unless you have it the other way around, where the light hitting it is a cool light. Then in the shadows will be slightly warmer colors, but that's something I haven't quite grasped yet, though I have done a few studies of it, and used that kind of principle in some of my illustrations, though they didn't quite work out in the end. Usually this is the easier and more natural looking lighting system where the shadows are cold and the lighting is warm, because obviously the sun is warm and in the shadows you'll have the bounce light of the sky, which is blue, so it'll make your shadows cool. Since I've changed the lighting of the face so many times, it's starting to look quite muddy. I was trying to play around with the idea of making the nose a little brighter, but it wasn't really seeming to work because the values around it were quite bright already. So I consolidated with just trying to make the face look alright. I had a lot of trouble with the armor. I didn't really think about what objects or lighting would be around, like imaginary objects would be around the character, which would have helped with the reflections and the bounce light in the armor, which would have in turn made it look more like metal, which is something I should have done, but I didn't, and then I just spent a lot of time trying to make it look right until I got fed up and I just moved on. Basically just refining on what I put down and trying to add more hue variation. When you have a bit of free time, you can always use your time restraints through your week to do quick studies or little illustrations. The amount of free time you have is limited, and you can always use that to your advantage, where you try do a character or you try do an illustration in the amount of time you have. Here I'm just fixing the lighting. I'm trying to make the armor look like armor, but for the most part I'm just like mushing colors around until it looks kind of right. I start bouncing around the piece a lot because I noticed that I'm running out of time. Doing this character really made me realize that I need to work more on lighting and form. Something I was struggling with in this, just the lighting, how it reacts on certain materials. Here I'm using the line drawing, just switching it on and off to make sure that I'm still on the right track. Also trying to fix the breastplate. I didn't really know what I was doing. Having quite a lot of trouble with it. And then touching up, trying to make the light kind of look alright. I was having a lot of trouble, so I kept doing something and then painting over it and then trying to just mush it around until I kind of got something I liked, which sometimes helps, but usually just ends up muddying your piece. It's always best to maybe try to look up some reference or something. I was trying to figure it out, but maybe I just went about it the wrong way. So I ended up anyway just using the mixer brush and blurring it all and then trying to work on top of that instead of to keep struggling with the same brushstrokes. And yeah, it wasn't looking alright. So you see, I just give up and I move back to the other shoulder piece. Bothering me with it at the time, but I couldn't really figure it out. And then I noticed that the main piece of metal and the smaller piece underneath it were on the same level, and that wouldn't really make sense for the thickness. So I used the lasso and I quickly dropped it, and it felt like it looked a lot better that way. You see, I'm uselessly just trying to render that little button, no reason, and just jumping around trying to fix it, make it look alright. Here I noticed that the shoulder piece in the shadow was too dark, so I was trying to darken it there. And then I realized that the shins were too long, so I just used the lasso and I dropped it a little bit. It's a bit hard to keep up with the video since it's going this fast. Trying to give like the gist of what's happening in it. It's mainly just touching up and fixing all around. Here I try to create a little more interest in the waist area, just adding a little bit of light that would fall there. Trying to fix it. As you can see, just a lot of bouncing around, trying to get the image look somewhat done. I noticed at this point that I didn't really work on the hands that much. So to not make them a focus, I didn't want to detail them too much. I just kind of at a passing level. And the cuffs were starting to look too much like gauntlets, so I gave them a bit of a droop to each of them. Just trying to add some muted colors to take away some of the harsh saturation that I added before and dim it down. I'm never quite happy with the metal on this piece. Had a hard time with it. It's great for practice though. Really shows where you're lagging and what you're having issues with. Finally added a shadow, although a somewhat inaccurate shadow. It wasn't supposed to be crazy accurate anyway. It was just to give the illusion that she's actually standing on something instead of floating in midair. And here's where I started lightening the background and the character. I was just noticing that everything was just too dark for my liking. It wasn't giving the right feel that I wanted. So I just lightened it up and using the level effect just took out some of the black in the image, which is something I tend to always do when I'm painting, is always go straight to black. It's a bad habit. Yeah, I start trying to add a bit of bounce light to make it look more like armor. Nothing too thought out, just adding a bit of blue in the bit of a cool color in the shadows. So at this point I'm just trying to make everything just look presentable really and fix the lighting as best I can. I think on a whole I should have chose a better lighting for the piece. Maybe more like a front left or a front right instead of almost direct side lighting. It seemed cool in my head, but I didn't really execute it very well. So I think the piece on a whole took only 9 hours or 8 and a bit hours, so it's pretty good. I won't be able to get around to doing another Final Fantasy fan art piece for a while. I need to get through some client work, and I want to finish editing and post the old illustrations that I recorded a while back before I start doing new illustration videos, cause This took up quite a large chunk of time, just the editing and all that. Because these take up a lot more time than just a study video with quick audio on top. So yeah, just fixing everything. Didn't have really a clear idea for the boots. I just wanted a little more like saggy leather instead of hard leather. Here I'm just adding the last decoration detail on the character. Give that illusion of finished. It's always great to set little challenges, like time challenges or layer challenges. For this, I kept it on one layer in the most part, just as a change of pace, because usually in my illustrations, I go up to sometimes up to 200 layers. So it's very different to just use one layer. And in a lot of ways, quite refreshing. It's great to set timed challenges, say, example, doing a character illustration in 10 hours, and then doing the next character illustration in 9 hours, and then 7 hours, then 8 hours, to really push yourself to see what you're capable of in very strict time constraints. For one, that'll really help your speed and your process. It'll also help your confidence in going into very strict deadlines for clients, because you have tested out what you can do in that amount of time. So you know beforehand. So yeah, it's really great exercise. Here I'm just trying to make the sword look like metally, so adding some highlights and stuff. I didn't want to work on it too much, just a tiny bit, just to give it a bit of detail. You can see I'm never quite happy with the armor because I always go back to it, try to fiddle with it a bit more once I've worked on something else. So yeah, for the most part, I was happy with the character. Hopefully, I do better in the next one. I want to thank everyone for watching the video, and I'll be sure to post more videos very soon.